The word on the street is that literally every player should go max Nevsky. So in this video, I'm going to go and address that by breaking down the very best combos, talking about why it is that people are so hyped about this commander, by the way, and also his very best talents, answering the question for you: should you max this commander or maybe invest in somebody else? Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and this video has been sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms. And there is a lot of nuance as to whether or not you should max one commander or another, with the exception of the start of the game, where everybody should max Esong, everybody should max Alexander the Great. It's very straightforward, and with little exception, people get it, and they go and do that, which I think is great advice. But in this video, we're going to give advice to brand new players, people that are looking to make a new Cav March, or people that are rally leads, to say like, hey, should you max Nevsky? And I want to start by talking about why people are hyped for Nevsky, and this is actually important to understand where he shines and where he doesn't. And for the most part, he's kind of good everywhere, which is why people are so hyped about him, and why he is in contention for being a commander that, like, hey, or maybe I should say consideration for being a commander that, like, everybody should go max. He's got a massive damage factor. Let's start there. 2,300 single target damage factor is really good. He also has a ridiculous amount of stats. Okay, 20% attack and march speed and health, and then also 20% defense. I mean, it's just completely out of control. And he only gets better when you are surrounding a target, which, hey, if you're fighting in the open field, you control your marches. So you can go surround a target, which makes it so that you do more damage to the surrounded target. You take less damage from the surrounded target. You do a defense reduction that is very, very strong. And to talk about this for a second, the defense reduction on Nevsky works as follows. If it's just one march hitting the target, then no defense reduction applies. If two marches are hitting the target, including Nevsky plus one other, then you have a 2-march swarm. There is a 30% defense reduction applied. And if you have Nevsky plus 2 other marches swarming the target, then you get the full 45% defense reduction. And that 45% is significant. This is an active skill, and active skill debuffs do not stack. So if you had Ethelfled and you had Nevsky and they both apply their debuff, the 45% debuff is going to overwrite the Ethelfled debuff for 30%. And I mention all of that because having a really, really high defense reduction is really powerful, because it will overwrite the existing defense reductions, which will also give you just kind of like more duration in total of defense reduction from the earlier defense reduction leading right into Nevsky's, whereas a weaker defense reduction will not apply at all. And sometimes I think an equal defense reduction will just not apply and do nothing. So having a swarmed target is really, really powerful when you're using Alexander Nevsky, but man, he even gets tankier when you get swarmed. Troops led by this commander have 5% increased normal attack damage when you unlock the expertise skill. That includes counterattacks, by the way, and gain a 10% chance to increase the health of cavalry by 30%. So if this thing is getting swarmed, when you are getting attacked, that means people are targeting you directly. You have a chance to trigger more health. So when you get swarmed, you get more tanky, which is kind of amazing. 30% health is not enough health to offset the fact that you're getting swarmed. Unlike Pakal, who gets like crazy, crazy, crazy tanky and crazy good trades when he's getting swarmed. That's not what Nevsky's going to do for you. He's just going to get a little more tanky, and that effect can trigger at most once every 5 seconds, but it's still a solid effect, and it lasts for a full 3 seconds. So Nevsky has also the final reason, if I haven't convinced you yet why he's so good. He's got all skills that are relevant in the open field, which is pretty busted, right? Like a lot of really great commanders that we all advocate, for example, Nebu, only have 3 skills plus the expertise relevant in the open field. One of them is actually just for rallying, okay? And he's still really good. But Nevsky, like every skill, just like Alexander the Great, okay? I mean, is it weird? They're just going to name all the commanders Alex that you should go and max. At least it makes it easy. There's Esong, you max Alex, and then you max Alexander Nevsky. So what are the best pairs for Nevsky? If I haven't convinced you already, who should you pair him with? And this might help sway you. And I want to give you the full range of combos from the most punchy and glass cannon. Glass cannon means you do a lot of damage, but you take a lot of damage and you can't handle getting swarmed, to the other end of the spectrum where, like, dude, you are tanky. Like, you do damage and you are solid. And if they focus you, like, it's okay. It's not great. Any March getting swarmed is going to be in trouble, except Bakal and Herald together. But, like, you're going to be on the more tanky end of the spectrum. So Glass Cannon, the most Glass Cannon, probably the most common combo you're going to see is XY paired with Nevsky. XY is going to have a lower rage requirement that comes from the rage requirement on his active skill and also the fourth skill. And those two paired together do ridiculous amounts of damage. In fact, that is very commonly going to be used to rally, especially to multi-rally, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But I dislike the fact that an XY primary is the single most focused commander in the game right now. Everybody has learned you can't run Esong primary and KVK because you get pwned because everybody focuses you. And now we're all relearning that you can't run XY primary and KVK because everybody will pwn you. They focus the XYs. And people have regretted investing in XY, not because he's a bad commander, but because they can't even use him in KVK because he is so commonly focused. I personally, even though I have XY, don't plan to use him. And that is in part because he gets focused, but also in my 5 March murder ball, I only bring 1 cavalry march, which means my 1 cavalry march that I bring is going to be Nevsky primary with Williams secondary. Now, this is slightly more tanky because Nevsky has some defensive stats that you don't get on XY. However, the thing that I like about this is that now I'm bringing Williams' area of effect damage and also his defense boost if I'm so lucky to hit multiple targets. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Also, William works really well with surrounding targets, and honestly, this debuff is more important than ever. I think it's more important than ever to have William in your murder ball because he removes all skill damage boosts. By the way, I didn't even talk about this with Nevsky because he's just so good for so many reasons, but one of his skills is giving you bonus skill damage. Well, William counters that. He makes it so that none of your bonus skill damage applies when he's got his debuff on you. So I like Alex primary and William secondary. I guess you say Nevsky primary and William secondary. That's the pair I will use. It is only slightly more tanky because William doesn't really have any defensive stats. And let's move in the realm to the next most tanky combo that you might consider trying, and that is going to be Nevsky with Minamoto. And of course, this is a relic Minamoto. That relic, by the way, is very easy to obtain. People were very worried, myself included, that it wasn't going to be free to play friendly to get relics. But then when stage 2 of Eve of the Crusade rolled around, I mean, they give you like, I think it's like 2 or 3 relics, just like for training 200,000. It's not even 200,000 power. Like, you do a tiny amount of troop training. And you get this for free. So this is very easy. You will relic Minamoto if you're using Minamoto. And dude, Minamoto gets some extra defense too. So the defense of Minamoto, the debuff of Minamoto, the damage of Minamoto, paired with Alexander Nevsky, he should be the primary, is just really strong. The single target damage for Minamoto is insane, by the way. It is really high. So the two paired together work extremely well. They would do a lot of single target damage. And Minamoto even brings a great debuff in the 4th skill, which is something that we now can talk about being kind of relevant because with his relic, he's actually a viable open field commander. So the next commander I want to put on the list that I think is going to be more tanky than I think it's slightly more tanky. Maybe it's equally tanky to the Nevsky Minamoto is Nevsky with Mehmed. Relic Mehmed, that is. And the relic for Mehmed is insane. Like 5% more skill damage and then also 20% health. Jeez, man. Like, that's totally on plan. He's got AoE. Nevsky has lots of damage. Smash them together. And, like, I think this synergy here is actually really good. You can even bring extra troops, which will let you do really well at the start of the fight, but then at some point you're going to want to refresh more frequently. Otherwise, you're not taking advantage of the fact that you had more troops to begin with, but now you don't. Nevsky with Mehmed, I think, is super viable in the open field, and although I haven't tested it yet, it's pretty easy to understand why area of effect damage on a commander that is going to boost the skill damage even further on a commander that has high skill damage can be very powerful. But now we can move into the realm of the maybe more tanky commanders. And I have 2 pairs for you that I think are going to work really well. The first pair is a Chandragupta primary with a Nevsky secondary. And the reason that I'm recommending that order of the commanders is that Chandragupta's active skill is going to give you 40% more damage. And then boom, you're going to do the 2,300 damage factor, which is insane. on Nevsky. Plus, keep in mind that Nevsky makes it so that when you use an active skill, you get more bonus skill damage for a short period, but you can only have that happen once every 5 seconds. So when Chandragupta goes first, not only does he boost all damage by 40%, but then this skill on Nevsky makes it so that the skill damage is boosted as well, so that when you hit with that skill damage from Nevsky, it's just going to be really, really savage. Like, I like that. And also, I just want to mention that Chandragupta has a little bit of health, 20%. Hey, that's tankiness. Take it wherever you can get it. Also, he's going to do a debuff onto the target for defense and health, which is really, really nice. And that is a passive debuff. So I'll point that out. It is a passive debuff, which means it should stack, no problem, with the active skill of Nevsky. So you can stack a ton of defense reduction onto the target and then just obliterate them with a huge nuke from Nevsky. I actually really like this combo. If I had Chandragupta, I would be testing it to see how it performs. I think that Chandragupta is underrated in the open field for a murder ball. Everybody loves using the web and the dagger, and they recommend them highly as accessories. But then, I mean, Chandragupta's got the equivalent of a web and a dagger just like baked into his passive debuffs here, and it all stacks. So, yeah, seems really, really good. And the final pair I'm going to recommend to you that honestly, like, if all I cared about was just getting some good trades, I would consider this combo. And I'm going to mention this combo also as a value combo. If you go 5-5, 5-1 on Saladin, it's good enough. Obviously, the expertise is better, but Saladin primary, Nevsky secondary. I've got video testing a bunch of these combos where we live streamed it. I'll have a card up in the top. We didn't test all of them because I don't have all of them, but it was a no gear test, important to mention, because we were testing a bunch of different primary commanders. You can't switch your gear in the middle of a match. But Saladin with Nevsky, man, it was very strong. And the reason it's strong is that the support tree lets you fire off active skills very frequently, but it also protects you a lot from skill damage. So having Saladin primary, who with his skills and talents gives you a lot of ability to fire off active skills quickly and also tankiness, is a great combo for the open field. Now, there are some other commanders that I think will be moderate, but I can't recommend, and that is a Relic Double C, and that is a Relic Esong. I think those will be fine. You could do it, but I just don't think that's where you want to be. Okay? CC is fine, but he's reducing his own defense. He does have some rage gen. He does have a little healing. I think he's fine. His debuff's really good, but it's all single target stuff. Minamoto at least has a debuff, right? Mehmed at least has area of effect damage. And yes, okay, Double C has a debuff, but like reducing their attack and their march speed, it doesn't excite me as much as reducing like the health or the defense of a target so you can blow them up. That to me feels like a stronger debuff in the grand scheme of things. And now I'll go to the commanders like I can't recommend, and that includes Attila, that includes Takeda. For those of you who have been wondering, and many of you have been asking in live streams, like, wait, but why not? Shouldn't that work? And the answer is no. And the reason is that Attila is going to be reducing your skill damage by 30%. That sucks, man. Nice that you can't get silenced with the expertise skill, but reducing your own skill damage is the opposite of what you want to be doing with Nevsky. Similarly, Takeda doesn't have any skill damage, so there's really a lot of wasted punch by pairing with a Takeda secondary. It just doesn't do what you want to do here. Jadwiga is the same story where, like, she's fine, but she's not really designed for open field. So you could do it, I guess, Nevsky Jad. I just don't know why you would be doing it. And then Khan, I just don't think is viable as a commander in the open field, unfortunately. Like, XY is the better Khan, and already I can't recommend XY because that thing is getting blown up. So if you think XY was bad, Khan is it's just worse. Should you max Nevsky? If you are a new player, I think that typically people would recommend that you max Esong and Alex, and I think those are great choices. I think if you were spending in the game and you had Minamoto, you were going to relic it, and you wanted someone to pair with him, dude, I think Nevsky Minamoto would be a sick way to break into the Season of Conquest, to add for yourself another really meta field march. I mean, it's not the best of the best, but it's really up there. It's really good. No one is going to tell you you made a terrible choice, I think, by bringing Alexander Nevsky and a Max Minamoto. Totally fine. And if you had like a 5-5, 5-1 Saladin or better, then you could pair with Nevsky secondary. And like, even if you're on a budget and you're like, well, like, what's the first combo I move in on? You could move in on Nevsky and Saladin, 5-5, 5-1 Saladin, and then rock Nevsky. Or you could even do Nevsky William. If you didn't have the Saladin and you wanted to have a full cav march and you didn't have Minamoto, 5551 Alexander Nevsky, 5551 William, and you're off to the races, man. And on that note, do you have to max Nevsky to enjoy him? I don't think so. What's amazing about Nevsky is that all of his skills are good in the open field. And, on other commanders where you're trying to use the least amount of sculpture investment, often you have to skip skills that, like Guan, for example, his second skill is all about hitting garrisons. So you try to go like 5-1, 5-5. It's very difficult to pull that off. Now we have more skill resets. It's more achievable. But I think with Nevsky, there's just like not a bad skill in the house here. But if you were to be working on him, I actually think you should max the first, second, and then probably the third skill. Just max them in order. You could, I guess, if you don't think you're going to ever be swarming stuff, try to go 5-5-1-5. But I'd honestly just do the first three, call it a day. And that seems perfectly fine. I am open to your thoughts down below in the comments if you have some other ideas for how to approach, a partially maxed out Nevsky and using him. And I would say, though, strongly that going 5-5-1-1 is your better starting point. So if you're going to use him like really low skill levels, that's the starting point for sure. Max the first two skills. With regard to rallying, I feel like until we see the Burt results, we won't exactly know. However, I do feel strongly that Alexander Nevsky, no matter what, is going to have a strong role in a multi-rally situation. Ton of potential there because reducing the defense of the target substantially and all these other benefits for hitting things that are getting swarmed, like multi-rallies are going to be just completely savage with Alexander Nevsky. I think that's a great play. And if you're already in the Season of Conquest and you're like, bro, should I add him to my lineup or not? I'm going to say something controversial here, which is that I don't know that I personally needed to max Nevsky. Like, I honestly could have just used XY and William in the open field, and I probably will get focused a lot more than with a Nevsky primary. We'll find out how that actually works when I'm in KVK. But I mean, Saladin William was fine. It was really good. And I'm only doing one cav march. So upgrading to XY William, I mean, yeah, I guess it's an upgrade. I'll get focused more. I'll do more damage. Alexander Nevsky with William, like, it's probably an upgrade. But at that point, these are sort of incremental upgrades. What I'm trying to convey is that there may be another commander that is more transformative for how your open field marches perform. I'm just going to throw something out there, man. I'm going to throw something out there that I didn't even expect, but Honda's looking sick these days in open field. Like, I wasn't expecting Honda to be just savage, and then, oh God, I just got really wrecked by a Honda recently. Honda Tommy, it's a thing. It's really nasty. So I'll just point out that if you already have like a cav march that's really good and you're trying to upgrade it, maybe you include Nevsky. If you've already got these other meta commanders, maybe if you're trying to make a second cav march, now you have my attention for bringing Nevsky into the picture. Because then I think it's an easier choice to say, okay, sure. Like, you needed another cav march, let's say. You already have Minamoto. You want to use Nevsky. Like, cool. That seems like a great way to put Minamoto in your lineup. It only takes one commander worth of expertise to get a full march, like, beyond what you already had. I think those are some fine choices. Did I need to max him? Maybe not. He's probably going to be really good for rallies, so I have no regrets about my choice here, okay? Just to be super clear. Nevsky's freaking sick. And as far as his talents go, this, I think, is one of the strongest builds, if not the strongest. This is what Cortex advised to me, and I think it's good because you really want to generate a lot of rage on this commander. The more he fires off his active skills, the more you're getting that huge defense reduction in play and doing a ton of damage. And if you've got other things generating lots of rage nearby, your skill cycle will get really, really, really fast. Now, there is a rage cap of 220 per round, and that's something that Wick brought to the world as something that, like, most of us didn't know that, and he made that information very public. I didn't know that at the time. However, even with the rage cap that we now know exists, I am going to use this build, even though I have William giving me rage per turn, that's 50, and I've got Trajan running around giving me rage. Like, I have all these things that are going to make it so that sometimes I rage cap. I still think I'm going to eke out more damage. getting this hopefully to trigger on the turns where all that other stuff isn't. Just firing off that debuff faster than when all your other marches are going to do a lot of damage is going to make it so that the target takes a lot more damage. 45% defense reduction. If you can get that to happen before all your other commanders do their active skills, seems good. Getting that a turn sooner actually matters. This skill right over here, this talent, gives it to you a turn sooner. Then we went and we got rage over here, a little bit extra rage gen, and then also halberd damage dealt to archers is really, I think, important to have here, and then emblazoned shield. There isn't really a lot of choices. Like, if you go all the way over here, the cavalry portion just kind of builds itself, quite frankly. There are, however, a couple other builds that I haven't tested, but I think will be strong. One of those is to actually go and max the cav tree. The reason that I think people are now kind of avoiding maxing the cavalry tree is that when you're battling in the open field, you often try to sort of rage hop. So before letting your target die all the way and then you leave combat, you actually switch to something else right before the target dies. That way you maintain all your rage, which means that you stay in combat. But if you think you're going to be entering combat and then leaving combat, entering combat and leaving combat, the boosted damage here, 15%, all damage is highly underestimated. That's very, very, very powerful, okay? That is a strong buff. And if you're generating enough rage, which is, it actually will be hard to do, but if you were generating enough rage such that you could get the active skill of Nevsky with the 15% all damage flying up there too, I mean, it seems good, okay? You get a little bit of march speed over here. You could shave off these points for more march speed. In fact, if you were shaving off some points from the cavalry tree, here is a clarity build. And there's a couple ways you could vary this, but the goal here was to pick up clarity. Clarity makes it so that when you use an active skill, for the next 6 seconds, you do 6% more skill damage. This, I think, is really strong if you think you're going to be in a prolonged fight. But you could take the sort of 4 points I dumped off to the side here, 3 in rage and 1 in health of cavalry. And if you wanted, you could put them in a rallying cry, get a little bit of a punchier start to the fight. I think that would be perfectly reasonable. Because you've got the versatility tree on this commander, there's really nothing you should do with that tree at all. So there's only so many variations of skill tree plus cavalry tree that are honestly kind of viable. I do wish that they would rework the versatility tree, but that's just not what we have for now. We've got the glorious randomness of Turn of Fate that no one uses, although maybe I'll make a video about this just for lols. Oh, God. Hopefully you found this guidance about Nevsky helpful. And if you want to see the video where we were testing live with open field, I'll have a card up in the top for that. You just tap the little info button. Also, I did a little bit of conjecture and a little bit of testing with Nevsky for rallying and sort of swarming with the rally. And I'll have that card up top as well. The most important thing to take away from that video is how I think you actually should test Nevsky potentially for a rally situation, or even how you interpret test results. So you know, like, oh, should I use this or not? But I'm sure that very soon we'll all have a really good sense of, is he working in KVKs and getting really sick trades or not? So until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. And definitely, if there's anything I missed, leave a comment down below with your thoughts about Nevsky for other pairings or things to test, things to try. I think he's a strong commander, man. And I think he is definitely going to change the meta for Rise of Kingdoms.